Hi, everybody. Tonight I have Fluffy, looking like some adorable creature out of Ewok movie or something. And he is, for those of you who may not know, he is from the same litter as Chocolate. But he's littler and Chocolate's bigger, but this is the boss. This is the one who controls, and they will end up going into like a ball. You can't tell that there's two cats. They look like a ball of fur rolling across the floor. They're fighting, they're biting, and I just can't believe it. And then 10 minutes later, they're lying, licking each other as if their little thunderstorm of kittenhood is all gone. Fluffy speaks in a language that I think that most of you who love cats, that you know. There's a certain yowl for food and water. There's kind of a purring meow when he wants to be petted. And both cats seem so much happier without their long, thick hair that you saw during the winter and the fall when they sort of look like badgers almost. Especially now that spring is here in Albuquerque. It went up into the high 70s today. It's actually very warm sitting here right now, almost like summer. And the green leaves are coming out in all the trees everywhere. So last week, on March 20th, I was talking about the large black pyramid allegedly deep underground 60 miles west of Mount Denali. Denali is 133 miles northwest of Anchorage. So 60 miles west of Mount Denali would be about 200 miles northwest of Anchorage. I did not know last Wednesday night during my YouTube broadcast that in Anchorage just the night before, on Tuesday, March 19th, a very strange brown-colored, long cylinder-shaped object was in the air above Anchorage and appeared to be slowly falling as resident Adonis Baugh caught the unidentified object on his iPhone. He submitted his video to Anchorage's KTVA Channel 11 CBS. The station headlined on March 21st, quote, "Falling object in Anchorage skies caught on video," close quote. The video begins with the voices of Adonis Baugh and a friend who asks, "You see that? It's something falling." Mr. Baugh agrees, "Yeah, definitely falling. I don't know what that is. I hope it's not a plane. It's going straight down. Now there's some fire on the end of it," close quote. In examining that video very closely, and I'm going to show it to you here in just a minute, it really isn't fire. The more you examine it, what it looks like in close-up is like a circle of white mist that is pulsing from the cylindrical end that is aimed straight down to the ground. And yet, when you watch this iPhone video, the strange long cylinder-shaped object on a vertical axis appears to slow down and to almost suspend in mid-air. Here now is that video.
See that? Mm-hmm. It's something falling.
It looks like a space shuttle or something almost.
Something definitely falling.
Yo, what is that?
Okay, I don't know what that is. I hope it's not a plane.
That damn sure ain't no skywriting plane. That's a damn sure.
No,
Like something
going straight down. Now there's some fire on the end of it. You see it?
Uh-huh.
Hold on, we're gonna get closer. Looks like it might be a plane dropping. I hope not.
KTVA TV contacted Elmendorf Richardson Air Force Base spokesperson Aaron Eaton to ask if any Air Force aircraft were in flight near Anchorage around 8:23 p.m. local time on Tuesday, March 19th. There are many different aircraft that operate from that airbase, including F-22 Raptor stealth fighters, C-130 Hercules, C-17 Globemaster transports, and E-3 Sentry AWACS command jets. Miss Eaton said about the strange cylindrical object in the video, quote, That doesn't look like any of our planes, close quote. And the Federal Aviation Administration went even further to say that the object in the video was not an aircraft. Here are two wide-shot images of the strange cylindrical object over Anchorage taken on Tuesday, March 19th at 8:23 p.m., according to Bei Kang, who said she used her iPhone to get these shots. She first posted them on Facebook with these comments, quote, "It didn't look like an airplane or one of those jets. It was big, super slow, and red, meaning red colored. I tried to get a video, but it got further and smaller." If anyone knows more about this strange aerial object over Anchorage, Alaska, or it could have been out over water, even further distance, and that about 8:23 p.m. on Tuesday, March 19th, 2019, please email earthfiles@earthfiles.com. All requests for anonymity are honored. And this is so strange because nobody has ever reported to date, a week later, that any kind of an explosion. And so we have something that is truly a puzzle, that it looks so constructed and structured as a cylinder. What was it? Where did it go? Now, there have also been several new loud boom noises reported over the past couple of weeks, making headlines in Colorado and California. This one on March 26, 2019, is from the Sacramento local CBS station, Channel 13, headlining, "What is causing the loud booms in Fair Oaks?" That's a community about 15 miles northeast of Sacramento, which is the capital of California. CBS reported that, quote, "A series of startling booms are being reported in northeastern Sacramento County. Residents say they have been startled by loud booms in the late evening hours for the past few months," close quote. But no one comes up with answers about what is causing the booms, as they have been reported around the world since 2011 without explanation either. The boom sounds now have been loud enough to set off car alarms, rattle windows, and wake people from their sleep. CBS also reports that the loud booms are now being followed on Facebook by 500 followers. Last weekend, on March 23rd to 24th, the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department received multiple reports of explosion sounds and sent out their helicopter and several deputies to investigate. The sheriff's office told reporters it figures maybe the cause are people illegally setting off fireworks, but others who live there and have heard the huge booms are not convinced that that's the answer. Then, yesterday, on March 26th in Colorado, Channel 9, the ABC affiliate in Denver, posted an updated news report with this headline, quote, "What are the loud boom noises keeping Congress Park residents awake multiple nights a week?" Close quote. Denver's Congress Park neighborhood is just east of Capitol Hill and Denver's Botanic Gardens downtown. Residents living in the block surrounding an alley southeast of 13th Avenue and Josephine Street complain that loud booms resembling fireworks are keeping people awake into the night, especially around weekends. One social network service for neighborhoods called Nextdoor has had several postings of boom noise complaints that, quote, "It's like the 4th of July every night the booms go off. It's not just one boom, it's like 2, 3, 4. It's close enough to really startle you," close quote. Another resident, Tyler Pierce, said that he believes the repeating loud booms are coming from the alley between York and Josephine Streets from 13th to 14th Avenues. But Channel 9 News, the reporters walked through 10 alleys in the area surrounding 13th Avenue and Josephine Street, and they did not find any evidence of fireworks. After last week's YouTube broadcast, where I also talked about the persistent booms, metal scrapings, and even trumpet sounds in the air reported around the world since 2011, I received this email from a woman from Santa Clarita, California, who asked to remain anonymous. Santa Clarita is about 35 miles northwest of downtown Los Angeles. Here is her March 26, 2019 email to Earthfiles. That was yesterday. Quote, "Hello, Linda. You ask in your March 20th YouTube broadcast for reports of strange sounds in the last couple of months and to please email you. I live in Santa Clarita, California, about 30 miles from Los Angeles. On the evening of Sunday, March 24th, 2019, my family and I were watching television at approximately 9 p.m., which would be California time, when we were startled to hear a very loud trumpet-like horn, which sounded like a freight train in our front yard. We ran to the front door and checked outside, but everything was quiet and still. It was the strangest thing, and we couldn't figure out what we had just heard. It only lasted about 5 seconds, but it startled us, and we just could not figure out what it could have been. We have lived in this city over 30 years and have never heard anything like this before. Even my husband, who never pays attention to strange things and thinks that I overreact, was alarmed and concerned," close quote. I emailed back and asked her for more details about what she said was the trumpet-like horn, which sounded like a freight train in her front yard. Yesterday, on March 26, she replied, quote, "I spoke with my daughter to see if she could add additional information, and she said the horn had more than one note. It was 2 or 3 at the same time. She is a musician with an excellent ear. My husband said it sounded like a very loud ship's horn, but he was unable to elaborate any further." Now, I used the freight train comparison because of the loud air horn similarity. However, it was not the typical train horn that I hear every day from the backyard of my house, because we live 4 miles west of the Newhall train station. The pitch did not change in that other sound, the trumpet, and it seemed to get louder before it stopped. It had metallic sound to it. It was blaring, all caps she wrote, and it reverberated, which means it sort of had an echo to it. It sounded as if it were coming from our front yard or even surrounding our home. It happened so quickly. We live on a very quiet street, so we figured if it were a big rig or other large vehicle, we would have heard it driving away. But when we opened our front door, within seconds, silence. I spoke to my neighbor who lives several houses up the street, and he and his wife also heard it. They immediately looked out their window and saw nothing, close quote. Now, for those who have heard my Coast to Coast Radio Earthfiles news segments with George Noory on the last Thursday of each month since 2004, and my earlier Coasts and Dreamlands with Art Bell from 2004 going backwards in time to 1991, that's 28 years, I have now transitioned away from Coast Radio, so I won't be on tomorrow night's last Thursday of March 2019. Instead, I am doing more work for this Earthfiles YouTube channel, for my earthfiles.com news website, for my very difficult whistleblower videos and evolving investigations, for more Ancient Aliens TV productions, and for more travel that is needed for all of this. It used to take me 60 to 80 hours of every month to produce those 4 half hours for Coast, followed by that hour of conversation with Linda. And I have corresponded with George and have said that if we get that big headline, "We're not alone in the universe," I would be delighted to go back and do a special on that breaking news that we all have been working so long, waiting so long for. And I would also like to seriously work on an autobiography of my long path from childhood love of the piano and a reflector telescope that my dad got me, to a professional career in TV and radio that took me unexpectedly into the high strangeness of animal mutilations around the world that are bloodless and trackless. And that experience forced me to look at the night sky again that I had loved so much as a child, but now through the lens of mutilations and law enforcement telling me the perpetrators were creatures from outer space. The night sky in 1979 to 1980 made me nervous for the first time in my life. Like the ranchers and law enforcement, I became worried about what was really out there in those stars and what has really happened on this watery planet long before humans ever took a breath here. And now in 2019, that big headline, "We're not alone in this universe," to me it feels so close. This week on March 25th, even livescience.com headline, quote, "Are aliens ignoring us? Maybe we're already their captives in a galactic zoo," close quote. This was the theme on March 18th, when a group of 60 scientists came together in Paris, France, to discuss, quote, "messaging extraterrestrial intelligence." That is the name of a nonprofit organization also known as METI. The scientists debated this question: why haven't aliens contacted us? Now, to many of you who are here tonight, I know I can hear you yelling, "But aliens have contacted us, and I've been abducted." But the scientists at the Paris meeting explored the concept that Earth is now and has been for a very long time under observation by alien zookeepers who keep themselves hidden on purpose in order to conduct their observations and experimentations with Earth without humans ever knowing. Like humans build zoos and aquariums to keep and watch animals and marine creatures. METI President Douglas Vikach told one of the Paris workshops that if Homo sapiens sapien are someone else's zoo animals, then perhaps, quote, "humans should increase their efforts to create messages capable of reaching our keepers to demonstrate our intelligence. For example," he goes on, "if a captive zebra were to suddenly tap out a pattern of prime numbers, humans would be required to reevaluate the zebra's intelligence and understanding, and we humans would be compelled to respond to those zebras," close quote. Well, the opposite scenario might be that Earth has been quarantined because humanity has already been evaluated by alien civilizations and found that we are not intelligent enough yet to bother with communications. And other advanced intelligences might be staying away out of compassion for us, because humans have never been properly educated by the power brokers of this planet about other life forms with great intelligence in the cosmos. And meeting some of these beings on Earth might overwhelm people who have never been prepared. Live Science concluded, quote, "Maybe if we humans want to hear from aliens, we just need to relax and be patient. Earth has been around for 4.6 billion years, while public extraterrestrial research was set off only 72 years ago by the crashes of unidentified flying objects in New Mexico deserts." Now, with extraterrestrial and other dimensional intelligences in mind, next Wednesday, April 3rd, I will have another whistleblower video, number 3, to show you in the series that I'm producing along with updated parts 1 and 2. So please mark your Wednesday, April 3rd calendar with a big star to be here with me at the Earthfiles YouTube channel to learn more about huge and ancient archaeology deep under ice in Antarctica from retired Navy SEAL Commander Spartan 1, and more about what is happening on the Moon, Mars, and beyond with Spartan 2, the Marine Intelligence Analyst. And for those of you who might like to talk with me in person about all of these subjects that we are exploring each week on this Earthfiles YouTube channel, you can join me in 7 months from now, in October 2019, in the week of October 6th to the 13th. I am inviting you to join me on a beautiful Holland America Ocean liner for a UFO cruise with seminars at sea, where I will be doing a free lecture about the question, is AI, artificial intelligence, an existential threat to humanity? I'll also be doing 2 special events, one about the military whistleblowers I have interviewed that include Spartan 1 and 2, and others with their own experiences in Antarctica, the Middle East, and beyond. The other special event is the mystery of childhood out-of-body travel that we've all been talking about here for the past few months. There will be great food and the pleasure of being with lots of people who want to know the truth about UFOs and other life in the universe, and then we can share questions, ideas, and experiences while we sail to Mexico's Cabo San Lucas, Mazatlan, and Puerto Vallarta. Also, speaking on the October UFO cruise will be my longtime friend and UFO investigation pioneer Stanton Friedman, and his co-author and human abduction researcher Kathleen Marden, along with historian Richard Dolan, brilliant Manhattan synthesizer of big ideas Alan Steinfeld, the profound minds of author J.J. Hurtak and his wife Desiree, who produced the Book of Knowledge, The Keys of Enoch, plus another dozen speakers. So come aboard with us in October, where we can all stay up all night if we want to, talking about the huge, complicated UFO mystery and that other big and related story. Who are we humans in this yin and yang cosmos? You can learn how to register for the October 2019 UFO cruise at my Earthfiles News website by clicking on Conferences and Appearances by Linda Moulton Howe and scrolling down that page to UFO Cruise. Another fun gathering will be Contact in the Desert, May 30th to June 3rd. It's now in Indian Wells, California, at the beautiful Renaissance Indian Wells Resort and Spa. Just see how beautiful it is in the hotel photograph at my Earthfiles website, Conferences and Appearances, where each event has hot links to tickets and registration. Contact in the Desert was so fun last year. One night, a group of us stayed up until 4 a.m. with night vision binoculars, and we were stunned at how much was moving in that Indian Wells night sky that we could not see with our naked eyes. I hope to see a lot of you there. Come and shake my hand and say, Linda, I'm there every Wednesday for the Earthfiles YouTube channel, and tell your friends and your family and your colleagues to subscribe to the Earthfiles YouTube channel so that we can keep growing. We've passed 100,000, let's try for 200,000. And the reason is because the more subscribers, the larger the audience, the bigger our dialogue leading up to what I hope will be the crack in the first civilization truth on this planet, that we're not alone in this universe. I find it exciting. I think that getting together to be able to talk with all of you would be fantastic on the UFO cruise, at Contact in the Desert, Manchester in England, where I'll be in July, and in the where I'm going to be highlighting other appearances as we go through each week at the YouTube channel of what I am doing upcoming. And another one will be Alien Con upcoming also, that is associated with ancient aliens. And so as we go forward on the timeline, I'll keep updating with the hope that we can continue our Earthfiles YouTube channel discussions in person on something like a UFO cruise under the stars at night and under the sun in the day. And with that, Lori, I would love to hear some questions and comments tonight.
The first question we have, Linda, is what do you know about what was found or not found in Lake Vostok or other under ice lakes in Antarctica?
It's Vostok, and Lake Vostok is one of those mysteries. The Russians were digging and doing a drill starting about 3 years ago or so. And there was scientific concern that if they drilled down into this very ancient, deep, fresh water that is about 1.2 to I think it's 1.2 or 1.8 miles under the ice, that contamination of the water would ruin it for all scientists, and looking at this water as being pristine and maybe 34 million years old, maybe 33 million years old. These are the questions that we get into in Spartan 1 and Spartan 2, the whistleblowers, about the age of the ancient archaeology that is huge, still powered 1.5 to 2 miles under the ice. And if you have something that is in acreage of archaeology, which they're describing, how could it have been built unless it was at a time when Antarctica was free of ice? And the largest consensus on that is 34 million years ago, it was still tropical and warm, and by 33 million years ago, ice all over the continent. The Vostok water, what exactly would the age be of this huge lake under the ice? Well, it was about a year and a half or 2 years ago that there were headlines from the Russian team saying that they had to stop drilling because they said that their drill broke. And I don't understand why. We haven't heard any more headlines. There hasn't been really any Russian science about what it is, if they found anything. And some people are very suspicious. What was the actual drilling of the Russian team into Lake Vostok about? And did they ever actually penetrate from the ice into that virgin water or not? So right now, today, in March of 2019, that's sort of where things have been left off. And I am intrigued by times when we have headlines about science missions that might be the cover for something else if it's in Antarctica. So I would say it's a great question, but the answers are not clear. What about another question?
You bet. So this one's a little long. Here we go.
Okay.
Could you ask Linda about a statement that was made by Richard Doty? He said that he was assigned to investigate Linda about which source was giving her classified information. Is this true or false?
I've never heard any variation like that before. If he has said that, I have not a clue what he's talking about. I met him when I was contracted by Home Box Office to do a documentary with the working title UFOs, the ET Factor. And it was March 21st in New York City. I remember because it was the spring equinox, and I loved that day when the sun starts coming back north. And I was at HBO and signing a contract to produce, write, direct, edit this hour documentary for home box office. And it was Peter Gersten, the attorney. We had dinner that night, and he had correspondence from a special agent for the Air Force Office of Special Investigations here in Albuquerque at Kirtland. And the correspondence was about a UFO landing of some sort in Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota. And Peter Gersten said, we have a win-win here. You're going to do this documentary for home box office. We would like to go to Ellsworth and seriously investigate on behalf of Citizens Against UFO Secrecy. I'll set up a meeting between you and Richard Doty at Kirtland at AFOSI. You go and get the names and phone numbers that he says that he has of some of these witnesses to this UFO landing, and not just the landing. Allegedly, one of the military security guards pulled a gun at the craft in which some sort of doorway or something had opened, and there was some sort of a being, and the security guard pulled his gun, according to the story, and then I believe it was a green beam came out, melted the gun in the security guard's hand, but did not cause any serious burns on the guard's skin. And as one man said to me, boy, to have a technology like that, we'd sure like to know how that's done. So that's what was going to be one of my segments for the HBO documentary. And Peter Gersten, that was March 21st in New York City. He set up a meeting for me to go to Albuquerque, New Mexico, to have a meeting on April 9th, 1983. And at that meeting, it's in my books. I've talked about it on the radio, in television. The short form is, instead of giving me a lot of information about the Ellsworth landing and the security guard and all of that, that apparently had been of great interest to the National Security Agency, he reached into a desk drawer, pulled out a manila envelope, pulled out, I remember it as being maybe, I don't know, 8, 10, 11 pages, 8.5 by 11 paper. The front page was all typed, all caps, briefing paper for the President of the United States of America on the subject of unidentified aerial craft, UACs. This paper used both UACs and UAVs. There was never one acronym of UFO, no acronym of UAP. It was UACs and UAVs, craft and vehicles. And in summary, the paper, probably its most notable content to me, was not the dry history of Project Sign and all of that. It was getting to paragraphs that said extraterrestrial biological entities manipulated DNA in already evolving primates on this planet to create Homo sapien. They used that original Latin. Now, for people often ask me about this. They say, you say, Linda, Homo sapien sapien. Isn't it Homo sapien? Okay. 2 million years ago in Africa, a evolving primate that is referred to by scientists as Lucy was the first primate to stand up. That was called Homo erectus, standing up, small, very primate looking. Over the last 2 million years, because that was 2 million years ago, according to scientists, when that occurred. Over 2 million years, there have been all kinds of models of standing up primates that have been evolving. And apparently, Denisovans ended up evolving eventually to Neanderthalensis. Neanderthalensis, about 35 to 45,000 years ago on the Earth, the height of the cross, it was a crossfade. The Neanderthalensis go out, and the Cro-Magnon Homo sapien sapien, that's the correct technical term for this current model of standing up primates that we refer to ourselves as human beings in this current 21st century. That's Homo sapien sapien. Homo sapien is the big group that started with Lucy in Africa. And on the last page of that briefing paper, or second to the last was about Project Aquarius. The second page before the last, at the top, it said, all caps, Project Garnet. And I remember thinking, remember your birthday, because my birthday's in January and my birthstone is a garnet. Project Garnet. All questions and mysteries about the evolution of Homo sapien on this, and they kept using Homo sapien, singular, the bigger group of all of the types of Homo sapien on this planet have been answered, and this project is closed. Those were the paragraphs that made my brain go tilt, and I read them over and over and over, trying to absorb all of the implications. In the first paragraph that said that extraterrestrial biological entities have manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien, it also had a sentence that said, referring to an avatar of history, had come to Earth to teach Homo sapien about love and nonviolence, but that humanity ended up killing that avatar and 2 others. So that briefing paper that Richard Doty pulled out of that manila envelope to show me was allegedly a request from he said, my superiors have asked me to show you these pages. And he said, you can ask me questions, you cannot take notes. He told me to move from the chair I was sitting in front of the desk to this, as I recall, like a green leather chair in the middle of a large room. I was to learn several years later from somebody who approached me at a conference and said, I know what you were wearing that day when you were in that office talking with Richard Doty, and started to describe my clothes, and then said, yeah, I've seen all the video of you that day. So that's why they had me move. The office was rigged to videotape people for their reactions. Now, I was about as green as any human could be in journalism about CIA, NSA, DIA, alphabet soup, intelligent and military intelligence operations as anybody could have been. 1979 to 80 is when I had my first trial by fire investigating the animal mutilations. And let me tell you, that was a heavy-duty experience. And it was law enforcement. They're the ones who were telling me. The perpetrators are creatures from outer space. And they gave absolutely reasonable reasons for why they were saying this. Not on camera would they say it, but they talked to me about this face to face. And there were 2 big categories for why they were saying the perpetrators were creatures from outer space. One, they would have a vet open up one of the mutilated animals in a necropsy, and they would find a missing bladder, a missing heart, missing all sorts of things were missing from inside on some of the necropsies. Not one surgery line anywhere on the body of the chest, the neck, going into the animal, but there could be let's say an udder or penis and testicles that would be removed from the abdomen, but it would be, this is where the sheriffs would call it a cookie cutter cut. I've seen hundreds of these. The muscle tissue and the lumen on the muscle tissue is still there. It's like an entire udder, or the penis and the testicles are removed by something that just goes high deep, and everything else is still there. And always, I'd say 98% of the time, the rectum is cored out. Now, all of that did not give me personally, as the director of special projects at the CBS station in Denver, who had come from producing medicine and medical and science programs for the ABC station in Boston from 74 to 76. And before that, I was a street reporter working for KNBC and then producing my own, it was a live studio program in Los Angeles where I was covering all kinds of science and environmental issues in the state of California. That was my job right out of Stanford University. I graduated from Stanford in 1968 with a master's degree in communication. I was the only female in a class with 27 guys. There were 28 of us. And each one of us had to carry camera, audio, edit, write, find money for films. Each one of us had to do everything. It was very, very good training. And while I was there, I did it would be like a documentary science investigation of people who can't touch their babies that are born prematurely. And Stanford was very interested in some kind of way to see the expressions on the mother or father or both's faces as they put their hands in these gloves. So I came up with a method that I would have 2 cameras and that I would have frames that were half and half, and adjusted the camera angles so that I could always be on the mother's face and then watch what was happening to the baby. And Stanford ended up using my film when I was there 66 to 68 for 19 years and sent me a lovely thank you letter for that film. And my master's thesis was about the very first time that the Stanford Linear Accelerator was applying or trying to apply computers to do the laborious analysis of atomic bombardments in the Stanford Linear Accelerator. So with that as background, my entire career was in medicine, science, and the environment. All of that, Los Angeles, Boston, Denver. I was very grateful that my work was acknowledged and honored in all of those places. I got a Peabody, I got a National Emmy nomination. And the reason I'm saying that is by 1979, with the animal mutilations, I had already a long track record. I had earned a lot of very, very wonderful journalism awards. I knew nothing about the CIA, DIA, NSA, NRO, and the list goes on and on. I was so green, but I think in a marvelous way, thinking back, the innocence that I wish we Americans could preserve, that we really do have a right to pick up the phone and call the Central Intelligence Agency, which I did at the beginning of my investigation on the animal mutilations. I just wanted to see if I could get an interview with a Central Intelligence Agency field agent that would tell me about their own investigations, if any, of the animal mutilations and what could be going on. So right from the beginning, I myself reached out to the CIA, just thinking with great respect, if anybody would know what was happening about these animal mutilations that law enforcement was telling me were creatures from outer space, it would be the CIA. So Richard Doty saying to anybody that he wanted to meet me to ask me about my sources doesn't even make sense. That was in 1983. I had done A Strange Harvest. It had gotten a regional Emmy. My life split in two at the station. I was moving on to do a documentary about astronaut training while I was getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of phone calls and letters from people not only in the United States, Canada, Mexico, all over, that heard about A Strange Harvest, and they wanted to either ask me questions about their own mutilations, or they wanted to send me photographs, which I started receiving a lot. I've seen, I would imagine, because we're talking now 60 or 79 is 40 years ago, I have seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of images of mutilated animals from every part of the world, and they all look the same. They all look the same. So that was a sort of faceted answer to the question about Richard Doty saying that he would be talking to me to gain my sources. So I hope this helps people understand that that visit to Kirtland Air Force Base on April 9th, 1983, I was there as a TV producer working for Home Box Office, and thought that I was going to get a list of eyewitnesses to the Ellsworth landing, because that's what Peter Gersten said that I could get from Richard Doty. And I hope that this helps clear up some of that history. Let's see. Lori, we have time for one more.
Of course. So first, I would love you to acknowledge our wonderful audience and their super chats and their support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everything helps.
Go ahead. Sam, quite a few comments tonight that your audience really loves that jacket.
Oh, thank you. Oh, may I tell a little story about this jacket?
Yeah, I know the story. So
Yes,
you better tell it.
it's really, look at these beautiful cuffs. It's 100% silk. Look at this. It's all lined with these beautiful, beautiful, look at that. It's just so gorgeous. My daughter was getting married in 2016, I think it was. And her color for her wedding outside of her white gown was purple and green. So at that time, I think it was 4 years ago, I went on the web and I was looking for something that I could wear in Philadelphia, and it would be hot, it would be summer. I had lived there and my daughter still lives there. And so I typed in silk jacket. And I knew it would hold up even if it rained. You can be in, I've done this, you can be in a silk jacket and it can rain at a wedding or anything and it will be just fine. And this thing called The Real Real came up. The Real Real. I never heard of it before. And so when it put jackets, I just typed in purple and green. And a picture of this came up on the website, and it was Dolce and Gabbana. And it said that this was like a $5,000 jacket for $199, because that's what the Real does. They recycle high-end clothes over and over. People buy and sell, buy and sell. So ladies and gentlemen, I got a Dolce and Gabbana jacket in a size 6 there was only one. They only had one jacket, and I was afraid when it came that it might be too small. And I put it on out of that box, and it was fit perfectly. And so this is my one and only high-end fashion designer clothing I've ever had in my life. And thank you, Dolce and Gabbana, for coming up with these kinds of designs. I just love it. So I hope that isn't too frilly a story, but that's the story behind this jacket.
I think that's perfect. So we've got another question for you. Linda, can you talk more about the whistleblower that talked to Neil Armstrong about what he saw on the moon?
He really wasn't a whistleblower. This was a man that I was able to sit and have a very long dinner with in Los Angeles when I was the supervising producer on a TV series, Sightings. And I was in Los Angeles in 1990 for 5 or 6 months producing on that TV series. Well, it was the pilot, and then it became the series. And one of my objectives was, I was so interested in, could we, because I was working in Paramount Studios, our distributor was to be Fox, then 20th Century Fox. So we were large companies, and with that, I thought I should be able to approach all of the astronauts who had gone to the moon and ask them, have you seen things that would fall into the category of UFOs? I talked with Pete McDivitt about the strange cylindrical object that he took Hasselblad photographs out the window, and it had some sort of a strange rod, and he said he never understood that when he got back to Houston, and he was so interested in seeing his Hasselblad photos of whatever this thing was outside the window. He wanted to talk with people about it. He went to the photo lab and said, I want to get my photos that I took. And the man said, I'm sorry, sir, you do not have a need to know. And he was both stunned and angry. And he said, I took those photos. I'm the astronaut. I want to see those photographs. And the man went away, and Pete McDivitt said, the man came back and said, sir, I'm sorry. I've checked. Who did he check with? Pete McDivitt didn't know. You do not have a need to know, sir. This sets the stage for now what I'm going to tell you about what I learned about Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong was at the top of my list as a TV producer who would like to talk with an astronaut about what did they see. They were the first ones, July 69. He was the first human, allegedly, to put their foot on the moon. And we never heard much. I'm in Los Angeles. It's 1990. And in those years between 69 and 90, I don't ever remember seeing Neil Armstrong doing much of anything publicly. It had become sort of mysterious. Why? So with this goal of getting as many of the astronauts as possible, I started putting out, as you do when you're doing television, and you start reaching out to family, to friends, schools, any place that might be able to connect you to the person you would like to try to interview. And one day I got a call from somebody who said, take down this name and this phone number. He is standing by. He's prepared to talk with you. He was one of Neil Armstrong's very best friends when they were training. They were basically students learning how to fly jets. So the call was made, the agreement was that this man would meet me at a restaurant somewhere near where our studios were. And it was a long dinner with a lot of complex facets that you would only get from somebody when you know someone in your teens, and then you evolve with them into your 20s. In many ways, those are the people that you bond with, many times the deepest in life, over life. That was the relationship between these two men. And he said, remember, he asked me, he said, did you see the New York ticker tape after they got back from the moon? And I remembered everybody was watching. It was so exciting, and the idea we were going to be on the moon, and it was fantastic. He said, well, you know, I'd known Neil for so long, and I was so happy for him, and I started reaching out to make a call so I could connect with him, because he was doing a lot there right after he got back. So he said, eventually I got connected with him. And he said on the phone, he knew that something was off key, because his dear, good old buddy didn't have any life to his voice. And here they had been the closest of friends, and there was no spark in the discussion. But Neil Armstrong asked him to go to Armstrong's house. His family was out. It was just Neil Armstrong answered the door. And that's that yowl that Fluffy makes when it's my turn for attention. But I'll keep talking to you about what happened with Neil Armstrong, according to his pilot friend. He said the house didn't have much light on, and Neil took him into some kind of a living room, and that Neil Armstrong sat down on a sofa, and there was a chair across, and he sat down and he said, I knew that something was really wrong, and I said, Neil, what is it? And he said Neil Armstrong slumped his body down on the sofa with a big sigh, and he said, there were 3 big silver discs parked over that crater edge as we were coming down. And then the man telling me this story said, remember in the live July 1969, there's chatter going on, but there was a 6-second delay, and they're coming down, and you hear the beeping noise and all of that stuff, and then suddenly it turns dust, and Houston said they just saw some rocks, and he's turning the lander to avoid the rocks or something like that. So the pilot said, Neil, that was the moment. He said, Neil said, if we had kept going, the camera would have been aimed and there would have been these big 3 silver discs on the edge of the crater, which is exactly what William Mills Tompkins, who died last year at the age, I believe he was 94, he was the very talented teenager that the Navy hired back in World War II to make models for them, and he ended up making models of UFOs. And William Mills Tompkins told me, told Tom DeLonge, told Bob Wood, told a lot of people that he had seen with his own eyes as a young man from the 69 of the craft of silver discs lined up on the crater. So as they continued to talk, the pilot friend talking to me in Los Angeles back in 1990 said he knew that he would be expected to keep his mouth shut. He knew that he would be being asked to go out into the public everywhere, and he would always know that the United States was in a complete schizophrenic policy. While one faction of our government and intelligence had a dark black space, secret space program, all the rest of us would be being told fairy tales. NASA would be the public face, but behind the scenes of NASA was the connection to the secret space program, and that there has been development on the moon. There's been development on Mars, is my understanding now, going back at least to the 70s, as if there were decisions made in the Apollo program and perhaps before, that the United States had knowledge about an alien presence, not only on our planet Earth, based underground all over the planet, but knew that there was a base inside the moon, on the backside of the moon, and that those structures, that base, was related to a base also on Mars and probably on other bodies in this solar system and beyond. So you can put yourself in Neil Armstrong's shoes. I think I can. You would have all of this celebration, a step for a man and a step for mankind. But knowing that you are always going to have to lie, because lie is also omission. He and others knew the truth. We're not alone in this universe. That long before the Homo erectus that I was talking about at the beginning of this program, 2 million years ago was Homo erectus standing up in Africa. For millions of years before that, there have been cycles of civilizations on this planet, through this solar system, and our government knows it. And I think, just like the animal mutilations made me nervous, this is the part of this big, huge whole story that has always made me nervous. Policies of denial and lies since World War II have been the theme of the allies of World War II: United States, England, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. Policies of lies and deceptions. Their own documents talk about, in all costs, all information about these extraterrestrial biological entities must be kept from the public and the media at all costs. Why? Today, in 2019, I truly think we are on the brink of that headline, "We're not alone." But even if that headline breaks, this huge, deep fabric of policies of lies and denial that maybe were not motivated entirely by humans, that secrecy, the laboratory where I started the program, the questions that are being asked by scientists in Paris, what would be the agenda of multiple alien species interacting with our planet and the solar system to keep us dumb and blind. And the one sentence of the last 40 years that always pulses in my head when I ask myself that question is that reply that I got from the National Security Agency analyst and the Defense Intelligence Agency analyst when they approached Ray Boucher in Nebraska and asked him if he could get my second book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1, to them. And that started this dialogue on floppy disks back then, little tiny floppy disks. That's how they said was the only way that they could safely communicate with me. And I put all of what they communicated, all of it, in my third book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness. And in their very first floppy disk, when I printed it out, it was like having the Rosetta Stone in my hands. I'm going to get all of the truth. And instead, if you read Glimpses Volume 2, you read that first letter, you will understand how it's a little bit confusing, but it makes you nervous. And here's the sentence. The non-human entities that our government is trying to work with are neither benign nor neutral. Now I'm pausing because I don't want to leave you on a note that feels like something bad could happen. But I'm trying to face the realities of the whole huge faceted phenomena. And the one thing that I think is the clearest that it has ever been to me on March 27th, 2019. There are friendlies, and they are allies, and they help us. Without them, there may have been really serious problems. There are a lot of neutrals, and they are on a fence. And then there are some real hostiles. Hostiles, as many people in the remote viewing program and others that I've talked to say, they would like to annihilate all of the DNA on Earth of Homo sapien. I don't know why. It may relate back to the alleged wars of the Anunnaki, and that it is so primal and deals with territory that we don't begin to understand. But on this spring day, and on this planet that seems to be more and more chaotic, and even though I have shared that one sentence that always, always is in the back of my mind, I've said it before and I mean it to my core. There is a divine field. It is responsible for this universe that, for reasons that are not clear, has yin and yang. It has light and dark. It has life and death. It has love and hate. They're juxtaposed to each other in our very souls, on our very planet, in our efforts to try to get humanity to stop warring. Maybe when Thomas Campbell, that physicist, was in an interview that I have done in several broadcasts in various venues, and it's at Earthfiles. Always you can go to the Thomas Campbell interview at Earthfiles. It's really quite profound. But he's the one who said that he was convinced, after his years of working in Army intelligence and then working on other projects with Robert Monroe in out of body, and his life kept evolving, And today, he stands on the conviction that this universe is an entropy reduction trainer for souls. And my t-shirts, down with entropy, up with light. That's what I would hope you will hang on to. I hang on to. Fluffy walking around here. Life. The cherishing of life. The cherishing and understanding of other life in this universe. I can't think of anything more exciting. And even if there are hostiles, so what? We have hostiles on Earth. I think humans are strong enough and want and deserve to know what does our government and other governments actually know about alien presences here on the moon, on Mars, and beyond. I do not think you or I are going to lie down in the face of whatever the whole truth is. I think it will only make us stronger. So, down with entropy, up with light, and next week, on April 3rd, Brad and I and Lori and Michael, we will be back, and we will share with you another segment of the absolutely stunning and fascinating eyewitness testimony of a Navy SEAL commander who has had his feet walking in the halls, on the ramps of huge, gigantic, ancient architecture 2 miles down under the ice of Antarctica. See you next week.